Hello. I wanted to do a talk today and share some ideas, beliefs that I have with people who may be Muslim, who may want to study Islam, who may look at Islam as their religion, or maybe a religion they're interested in. And this topic today is going to be about shirk, associating partners with God, taking partners with God. Islam, at its core, is a monotheistic religion. And what that means is we believe in one God. And it sounds simple on the face of it, but when you go deeper, you really start to ask yourself, okay, what is worship? Okay, these are questions that need to be asked and should be asked. What is meant by worship? How do I know if I'm worshiping more than one God? This is where a lot of people get mixed up. It's not just your tongue saying, hey, I believe in one God. Okay, because everybody believed in one God originally. Everybody. But you run into problems when you associate partners with God. Okay. Does that mean you don't believe in one God? No, it does. It means that you believe God has partners. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Okay. How do we break it down? Well, we know the story of Abraham, how it went. And you know what? Let's talk about the story of Prophet Yusuf or Joseph. He went to jail, and there's a part of the Quran where he asks someone to help him in jail. Okay. And help to speak to his Lord so that he can get him out of jail. And we are to understand that God did not like this. Okay. I won't going to go into more details. However, the idea that he was putting his hopes in someone other than God was essentially a sin that you could mark up to some version of shirk. Okay. And so that's powerful because we see even prophets may or may not have been 100% perfect all the time. We know that. Even prophets may have made certain mistakes or have had certain weaknesses. Of course, their weaknesses are so minor compared to ours, but they're there, and we're supposed to be able to see their example about how they grew past these weaknesses and how they completely perfected their faith and these sort of things. Okay. As I go through this talk, there's going to be a lot that you don't understand. Okay, there's going to be a lot of ideas that may sound heretical. Okay, to the lay person. Okay, because when you got to remember when religion is being taught to the lay person, it has to be taught and spread as a creed, a group that believes in clear, set, black and white facts and boundaries. Okay, and one of the things in Islam is to say, okay, well, we don't believe that prophets can sin; they are incapable of sinning. Okay, I posit to you that this is a human invention that humans created after the Prophet Muhammad. This is a human-made religious tenet. Okay, nowhere in the Quran, which is God's words, does it say anywhere that prophets cannot sin or they cannot make mistakes. Okay, and this is a debate in Islam. Some scholars say one way, some scholars say the other, but the accepted majority these days would say prophets can't sin, and anyone that would say prophets are capable of committing any type of sin would just keep their mouth shut and be silenced because they don't want to come off like they're insulting a prophet. Okay. Not knowing that by not insulting the prophet, you're actually insulting God. Okay? Because if a prophet is perfect, then you're raising him to the level of a deity, okay, who has power. Okay? And nobody has power other than God. Okay? And this is the essence of monotheism. Okay? And the idea, the simple definition that I would say when it comes to worshiping other than God would be: do you think, if you think that and this seems to be God's definition in the Quran, which is, do you think this created entity has the ability to benefit you or harm you? Okay, if you believe any created entity has the ability to benefit you or harm you, then you are attributing God's characteristics to that entity. Because only God has the ability to benefit you or harm you. We know this with the story of Abraham. He was tossed off the cliff into the fire, and God made the fire into be a cool bed for him. Okay, this is to articulate the idea that only God is able to save you and help you. Okay, period. And this is an extremely difficult. It's an extremely difficult belief to wrap your mind around. Okay, and a lot of the mystics that I tend to criticize a lot, they are more concerned with the practice of increasing their spirituality so that they are able to let go and only depend on God for benefit or to avoid harm. Okay? And along that path, some may sway, some may uneducatedly state incorrect things or believe incorrect things, so it is dangerous. It's a dangerous heretical type belief system because it tends to abandon studying scriptures. That's why I believe even Jewish mysticism, Kabbalism, you're not allowed to really practice it till you're 40 years old. You're not allowed to really study it because they want to make sure that you have a firm grasp of the actual religion and the tenets of the religion before you go on trying to perfect your faith. I don't know how useful that is or unuseful it is. I think we could simplify it for people, but it does hit different at different stages of your life because at different stages of your life, you have different things to contend with. Okay? And you have to then rise above those things you're contending with and connect with God and ask God for help and peace and whatever else you need from God to help you. And essentially that's how you get past this. Now, specifically, the topic of shirk could be talked about forever. Okay, and basically, you could argue that a lot of the Quran and all the prophets' of stories are based upon shirk and not committing shirk. And you could argue the whole religion is shirk. You can make that argument that even Adam in the garden when he ate the apple, it was shirk that made him eat the apple. It was him thinking that this apple could provide him any benefit or harm. Okay? Not knowing that the only person that could provide benefit or harm is God. And the devil's job is to sway us into believing that something other than God can provide you benefit or harm. That is essentially the root of all sin, really, or all shirk, in other words. Okay? Why is shirk bad? Shirk is bad because it makes you do bad things. Essentially, that's why it's bad. It makes you do bad things. Now, if somebody just had shirk beliefs but never did anything bad, would that necessarily be bad? Well, you got to ask yourself. I think there's a second reason why shirk is bad, because it limits your potential. It limits your ability to affect the world with limiting beliefs. That's another reason why it's bad, because it limits the ability for good people to spread goodness in the world. And that's why a lot of these mystic groups are secret, because the average person is not going to be able to really grasp these ideas. And it is around the age of 40 your mind really starts to be able to grasp a lot of these ideas. Okay. And and grasp the spiritual nature of it and the philosophy of it. Okay. If God does exist, which we can establish, I can establish that for anybody who wants to know. I can establish that God exists. Okay. And he's all powerful. If you believe these things, that's why religion is a programming. If you believe these things, and you believe that there's some rules made for us to basic guardrails, okay, and you believe all that, then the next question becomes, what then? Well, you live your life and you try to achieve what you want to achieve. But you realize that in life, you're generally going to pursue things that were programmed into you from a young age. Okay? You generally are going to pursue things that you made a decision sometime in your adolescence, that I want to have this career, I want to have this spouse, I want to have this many kids, I want to drive this type of car, I want to live in this location, okay? I want to make this much money. You tend to come up with all those type of things, that you have to be independent, you have to fly out of the nest, okay? And you do these things, okay? And you accomplish these things, or you don't accomplish it, but you realize that your needs end up changing. You realize, okay, I got money, I got my job that I wanted, I got the things I set my mind to, and you realize that nothing you pursued, number one, gives you anything. Okay, it doesn't give you anything except maintains you. Okay, it maintains your body, it maintains your brain, it maintains your health. That's all it's doing. It's just survival. And a lot of it is based upon things when you were a child, like a movie you saw, a parent that influenced you, just some sort of influence that was on you as a child. It really has no rhyme or reason. Okay, it's not profound. All these goals that you're pursuing, there's no reason behind it other than to feed your survival, the survival of your mind, your body, your psychology. That's really all it's for. Okay, that's really all you're pursuing. You're pursuing your base human instincts of survival, reproduction. Okay, these are the things you're pursuing. Your programming that was from when you were a child, and the environment you're in, with the social status you're in. If you grew up in England, you might want to be a soccer player. And then you could become a soccer player. You could marry the top supermodel, and then you realize that these things are burdens. Okay, these things don't give you fulfillment, and in fact, they are burdens and responsibilities that you have to carry. Okay, and you have to serve and give with these things. Okay, and that's what you end up realizing. Okay, so you end up realizing, well, okay, I got all these goals. I'm happy I have them because I'm surviving, but it's not giving me the spiritual fulfillment. It's not really helping me. In fact, these things that I'm pursuing, they hurt me. Okay, they hurt me in a lot of ways, and I still have to give to them, and they hurt me back. So you realize that you put your faith in these goals that did not pan out the way you thought. They did not give you anything other than to satisfy an urge, okay, an animalistic urge that you had. Okay, that's all it did. Your goal might as well have been to go get a chocolate cake. You could have traveled across the world to get a chocolate cake, and then you eat that chocolate cake. But we all know when you eat a chocolate cake, the experience is nice, it tastes nice, but then it's over, and then that's it. Then you are yourself again, and that's everything. You realize that the journey of the chocolate cake was fulfilling, and you also realize that sharing the chocolate cake with a less fortunate and helping people and help educating people and help serving people is more fulfilling than actually satisfying your own base urges. Okay. And then you realize, well, why should I have these base urges? Why should my base urges um, why were they important? You realize, well, it is important. Okay, your base urges are important. Okay, because if you were not able to satisfy your base urges and fill your cup up, then you're not going to be overflowing, and you're not going to be able to give to others. Okay, and then you realize that much of the world is still stuck in their base urges. Okay, and they just stick in that area for their whole life. Okay, and some people can't even get past level one or level two because maybe it's no fault of their own. Maybe they're in a war torn society. Maybe they're oppressed by others. Maybe they're in a drought area. Maybe they're in you know an area that was hit with disaster or disease. Maybe they're being fed false information by bad actors. Okay. Essentially, you realize that much of society is not able to reach all their base urges so that they can even begin the process of deciding what do I want to do with my agency. And you realize that they are not able to reach there. A lot of times it's because of bad actors. Okay, and you realize that, okay, I want to replicate myself. I want to replicate people that can be good people and serve others. And the more there are of people that can be good people and serve others, the more people will be served. Okay, and you realize that there's all these bad actors, and you realize, okay, well, what are my options here? Well, my options here is I can help diminish some of these bad actors with what they're doing. I can help fight against these bad actors. Okay, and I believe with this channel, that's what I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to fight against the bad actors that feed the Muslim and non-Muslim population with false beliefs and false information and limiting beliefs. Okay, one of those is shirk, thinking that something else can give you power or give you benefit or hurt you other than God. And the truth is, nothing else can. Period. To believe nothing else can, that's a whole other discussion. That's a matter of your faith. You know, but if you do believe it, okay, and I want to talk about this just a little bit. Okay, there's a lot of ways to think about worship. What is it you worship? Now, one way it can be talked about is worship is something. This is just a hypothesis that I think is half false, but it might be half true, and that's why I'm saying it. Okay, worship is what fills your time. Okay, so for example, if you're spending all your time gambling, you worship gambling. You think gambling can give you benefit or harm. Now, if you spend all your time working, working is important. You need that to survive, and you need that to serve others. Okay, so working is an act of service. You could say to God and others. Okay, and that's why maybe why it's so important to give to charity because God knows that so that when you're working, your work becomes an act of worship. Okay, if a certain percentage is going to charity, then work itself becomes an act of worship. Okay, but what is it that's you're spending your time and energy in? Okay, these things could be an act of worship. So if you're giving your spouse her due, that could be you fulfilling and serving a purpose. Okay, now if you are doing too much, it could potentially go to the field of worship. Okay, of spending too much time seeking too much from your spouse. It could enter the field of worship potentially. If it's 24 hours a day, nonstop, that's all that's on your mind, it could enter a field of worship because you think that your spouse can provide you benefit or harm. Okay. Another thing could be womanizing generally, you know. If you think all these women are going to provide you benefit or harm, you could be worshiping them. Okay. Now, if you're doing it for the goal of getting married and reproducing and having children, then you could be serving God. Okay. So there's a fine line there. Okay. Um, Now, I want to talk about this. I believe shirk also could be asking someone, desperately asking someone, thinking they have ultimate power or independent power of God. Okay? In other words, asking your boss not to fire you, begging your boss not to fire you. For example, well, your boss might agree not to fire you, and then the company shuts down. You might get fired and then end up finding a better job. The idea, or he might not fire you and then he gets fired, someone else fires you. Like, you don't know who has power over you, and no one does have power over you other than God. Okay, you might die the next day. Okay, only God has power to give. Okay, even if that's through other people. Okay. Um, another version of shirk could be asking. So we talked about asking people that are alive. Could be shirk. It could also be shirk to ask someone that's dead. Okay, just because they passed away doesn't give them any extra powers. Okay, you could ask someone that has passed away for something. Okay, anything that could be shirk. In fact, I would say it is shirk. Um, Now, is prayer shirk? No. Why? It's not shirk. Why? Because God told you to pray and He authorized you to pray. Is giving a charity shirk because you think you're going to get benefits? No, because God asked you to do that. Okay. So, acts of like rituals or acts of service or acts of any acts that are authorized or requested by God are not shirk. That's following the advice of God. Okay. Um, if something you're doing was not authorized by God, it would be shirk. So the prophet Abraham was asked by God in his dream to kill his son. That is not shirk because God asked him to do it. But when God banned it, okay, God then banned human sacrifice. If you then go and try to sacrifice a human, then you're committing a sin, and potentially how you feel about it, it could be shirk too. Okay. Let me see here, what else I have. So I want to just go through these verses here, these three verses, and most of them do not believe in Allah without associating others with Him in worship. Okay, and most of Him is referring to just the human race. Okay, most of them do not believe in Allah without associating with Him in worship. That includes all of us. Okay, there are things in this world that you think if you got it, it's going to give you some sort of benefit or harm. Okay, for example, you might think if you go to the gym and work out a lot, you might live longer. You might think if you go to the gym and work out a lot, you just might be healthier. That's not shirk. But if you have some obsessive belief that the gym is going to somehow be your savior, then that could be shirk. Okay, and that can go for anything. If you're looking for meaning, answers, fulfillment, saving, hope anything, it could be shirk. Okay. Now here, God says He does not forgive shirk. Indeed, Allah does not forgive associating others with Him, but forgives anything else of whoever He wills, and whoever associates others with Allah has indeed committed a grave sin. Okay, so like this could be like, okay, I want it to rain, so let me do a rain dance. Okay, that's shirk. Okay, your dance does not cause it to rain, God does. You could be like, I want more money, let me do a money dance. No, that's shirk. Only God causes, you to have money. Okay. Um, I want to get pregnant. Let me do a pregnant ritual. Okay, that would be shirk. Okay. All you have to do is ask God for whatever you want, and that's called prayer. And if you do that, that's an authorized way of seeking God's help directly to God. Okay. Now, if you do a ritual by seeking God's help, that might be okay. But if you think the ritual itself is needed, or the ritual itself becomes indispensable, no, like it's not. If you go to somebody and say you can't pray to God, you have to do the ritual, then you're then worshiping the ritual. But if you say, look, I can pray to God, or I can also do the ritual to show more respect to God while I do it, you're choosing something more of a preference, and that could be okay. Okay. So it's a very fine line, and this is why humans keep falling into shirk. Okay, time and time again they keep falling into shirk, and they would defend themselves by saying, "Look, we believe in one God. We just want God's servants to. We want to ask God's servants to help us get closer to God." That's shirk. No, you think the God's servants have independent power, independent say. But nobody's more generous than God. Nobody has more mercy than God. Nobody's all hearing other than God. Okay? So why would you can't actually go to anyone else. You would have to go to God. Okay? Cuz he's the one that can hear everybody, answer everybody all at the same time, and he has unlimited resources, unlimited power. So that's why these things are said, because you don't want a king coming along saying, "Hey, if you want God, you got to come to me. You got to I'm God's, I'm the king, right? So I have all this power. God favors me. So if you want your favor with God, come to me, give me what I want, and then God will shower blessings on you." God does not want people to take advantage of other people that way. That's just one example. There's many examples of how people could take advantage of other people. And then people stay poor, and they don't have their needs met, and they're not able to grow and serve others, and this is why it holds humans back. It's very detrimental. And society today is made up of trying to influence you that you can be saved with this perfume, with this watch, with this look, with this money. If you take this course, you're going to have that money. It's going to let you get all the women you want, which then is going to bring you happiness. Like society is situated in a way where it's just trying to make you to hijack even your ability to meet your needs. It's actually going to redirect you to get sidetracked from even meeting your needs, which is hard enough on its own. Okay. But it is required for us to meet our needs, and then to grow past those needs. Okay. But society is set up to even hijack your ability to even meet your needs. Okay. They might go ahead and say to you, well, hey, don't go to school, gamble instead, go do cryptocurrency instead. Become even things like become a pickup artist. You don't need college. Become a pickup artist, and you could be poor and have all the women you want. You know, they'll tell you might be a woman. Change yourself to be a woman, thereby permanently messing up your ability to meet your needs, or vice versa. And so society is set up by giving you a lot of false information so that you will never be able to meet your needs. They push foods and drugs and medications and all types of things on you to mess up your hormones and your health, so that you're actually not able to have energy to think, to work, to reproduce, to find someone to love and have kids. They actually work hard to jam you up with all these thoughts. And social media is now putting this in hyperdrive, okay, where you're actually incapable of achieving your goals, achieving what you want. And for the very simple reason is because they're stopping you every step of the way from being able to meet your needs and get out of the nest and fly. They're keeping you stuck on level one, level two, where now you don't have the energy to even get up and do anything productive, achieve any resources, meet any people, be healthy, reproduce. All these things are being hijacked along the way with addictions, hormone disrupting drugs, and other health things. And they keep pressuring you and pushing this on you, okay, in order to mess you up, okay. And because they don't want strong people, independent people that meet their needs. They don't want that, because once you meet your needs, you can then engage and give and serve society and help other people meet their needs, which will then help more people help engage society. But they would rather have everyone else weak and victimized, sucking your resources as you try to build and meet your needs. They want to suck your resources during that process through deceit, not by offering you things you need like bread, okay, water, your necessities, homes, construction. Okay, they want to suck your resources by manipulation, okay, and suck your energy and health through manipulation, okay, so that you stay weak and dependent and paying them for whatever they want to sell you, okay, so that they can continuously get richer and make money off you disproportionately. Okay, in society, I mean, everybody has 8 hours a day to work. The only reason some people are able to disproportionately earn more than others is because they have hijacked other people's productivity. Okay, and they are redirecting those resources elsewhere. Okay, I work with the insurance industry, and the only reason I'm able to make money is because I sue insurance companies who have record $1 billion profits, okay, because they take premiums from people and they don't pay them back out. So there's a source there where funds are being sucked like a vacuum, and they're being stored, in this entity of insurance company with the shareholders and the owners, and they're making profits out of fear. There's laws that say you need insurance to drive, okay? And this has created a situation where private companies can go in there and overcharge and underdeliver to the consumer, okay? Causing a lot of money every month from going out from people's money from their productivity, to the extent where, and they don't want to pay it back, to the extent where you need to, thankfully, the society has a court system where you can air your grievances in court and tell them, hey, you actually owe me money under the contract we signed, and you don't want to pay it, so I'm gonna take you in front of a judge to make you pay it. And that's why there's so many lawyers, okay, personal injury lawyers, okay. But that's the imbalance there, which is sucking people's resources, okay. Partially it's because medical care is expensive, okay. That's another part, is medical care is expensive. And cars are dangerous, and they're driven by human beings, which these days have cell phones and they're texting all the time. They're not paying attention. Okay, and that's causing injuries and permanent injuries in people. And yeah, so, which is just another reason, having people distracted and driving and unsafe causes damage to people's productivity. Okay. Another way that they suck money is gambling. Okay. Or drugs, even pharmaceutical drugs. Okay. They want, no, not all pharmaceutical drugs, but they want people to get caught up. Like, I know Ozempic was very popular. You could lose weight by just taking a drug. It's going to make you not hungry, and I don't know what it does, increase your metabolism, whatever. That's just sucking money. It's not may not be a permanent solution from what I hear. And on top of that, it probably has long-term side effects that's going to mess up people's futures and abilities to thrive and have their needs met. Okay, so it's just going to keep much more of the population under the threshold of having their needs met. Okay, but imagine a society that's agrarian or even on a tribe in an island. Okay, everybody would work and everybody would have resources, and then everybody would share these resources or trade for the resources. Okay, and then everyone would be able to meet somebody and have children and then meet your needs, and then from there, with the extra resources and knowledge and ability they have, they can teach the next generation to do it in a more efficient way and a more you know, in a better way, which provides resources to everybody else. Okay, so last verse here. Repentance is not accepted from those who knowingly persist in sin until they start dying. Then they cry, "Now I repent." Nor those who die as disbelievers. For them we have prepared a painful punishment. Okay, now here we're told in Islam, the conventional knowledge is that if you die and then you give your shahada, and your shahada is the shahadan, which is bearing witness that God is one, and bearing witness that the Prophet is his messenger. Okay, and we're told that if you die while saying that, then you are gonna be forgiven for everything and go to heaven. Okay. Now, is that what the Quran says here? No, it doesn't. It just says when you die, it doesn't matter what you say. So you believe that. Why do you believe it? Because you heard someone say it. So do you believe that that person who told you that has ultimate knowledge? Because God didn't say it. So, and all of the speech from God is in the Quran. Okay. So you have to really think about exactly what you're saying and what rituals you're following. So if you're following a ritual not given by God, kind of goes against what God was advising you. At what level are you going to be punished by God? Maybe you were a sinner your whole life. You thought that you could give the shahadan before you die. You go to heaven, and then you realize that that's false. Maybe you did the ritual, and then God tells you, why are you doing the rituals that bad people were giving you? I wasn't giving you those rituals. Oh, they said that these people said that you authorized it. The God's going to ask, well, were they a prophet? No, they weren't. You know they weren't a prophet. So I only say things to prophets. Oh, well, I think the prophet said that. How do you know? Did the prophet write it down? Did the prophet tell you? No, but I think that the prophet said it through 1, 2, 3 sources. Okay. How do you know? Did you read those sources? Do you know if they're reliable? That the prophet said it. And also, when the prophet said it, did he say God told him? Because the prophets, told you what God said. And it's all compiled in the Quran. So things that are not in the Quran are allegedly said by the prophet. Allegedly. Okay. Do you know for a fact the prophet said it? Can you prove it? Have you studied it? And even if he said it, did he tell you that this is a rule from God? Are you required to follow everything the prophet says? That may not be a rule from God. Are you required to follow the prophet's whims for your religion? Okay, not for your governance, because God does say you follow the prophet for your governance. But does he say follow the prophet for your religion? Okay. Or does God say anything for your religion is contained in the Quran? Okay. So these are things you had to study yourself. Okay. Because a lot of the misinformation coming from Islam has to do with this hadith corpus, which people just assume the prophet said it, right? No, he didn't. Okay. Prophet did not write any books other than the Quran. Okay, if you look at the history and study it, you'll realize a lot, or I would say all. Now, I'm not. Some might be useful for your practice, your society cohesion. Some might be wise. I'm not knocking everything. Okay, I'm just saying, for your religion and salvation of your soul, everything you need is in the Quran. Okay, that's what God says. Don't argue with me. Argue with God, or argue with my. A lot of they do. They'll argue with the ability to comprehend. Okay, and that's a discussion for another time. Okay, but at the very least, I could say, why don't we normalize citations for hadiths? Okay, so like if someone writes an article or says a speech and they want to give a hadith citation, why don't we require at the same vigor as the Quran for them to give us a citation for their hadith? Okay. Um, at the very least, we should require that. Okay. So that we can see exactly where they got it. Because it's gotten to the point where people are saying hadiths that are not even in any of the big hadith books. They're saying hadith just that actually don't have any source at all. Okay, that have no that have no narration at all. They're just someone said it 200 years ago, or 300 years ago. Okay, and if you and I know it's hard for people to believe that people don't make things up, but they do. Number one, and number two, even if they did not make it up, okay, and this person actually said it, let's say hypothetically, and they made it through history orally, and then it was written down orally, and then it was written down. Okay, let's say that actually happened. Okay, but it contradicts something in the Quran. You have to make a decision. Okay, but at the very least, I think people get away with telling stories without citations a little bit too easily. And at least people should be given the source citation so they can go to it and attack it properly. Okay. Um, it's important to remember God is there for us. God is there to God is there for us to hear our prayers, answer our prayers, help us in anything we have going on, anything at all, and we should never forget that and never stop believing that. Okay, and we are to do good to each other, help each other, serve each other. Okay, yeah, and I hope that this talk here has been helpful in some way. All right, thanks.